Hey, you look just like me. Huh? I turned around. There was a man behind me in line at the coffee shop. He pointed at his shirt. Oh yeah, I'm wearing a red shirt too. Haha. I forced a laugh. I turned around. It was my turn to order. Doppelgangers. We look alike, you and me, the man said again. I looked at him. He really didn't look like me. He was an inch shorter maybe, and he had a combed flat haircut like a 10-year-old's. But he had the same general build as me. We were probably the same age, and we were wearing the exact same clothes and shoes. He even had the same type of messenger bag. I imitated his dopey smile, hoping to appease him. I really didn't want to talk to anyone. Yeah, twinsies. I turned around and ordered my iced dirty chai. I went over to the pickup counter to wait. I'll have an iced dirty chai too. Oh no, seriously? He stood next to me at the pickup counter, still grinning. He was standing too close to me. It was strange. I could almost feel a kind of pressure or radiation coming off his body. It was like he had some sort of film of hot air an inch away from his skin. He kept whispering, twinsies, twinsies. Look, man, I said. Don't take this the wrong way, but you're really making me uncomfortable right now. I'm gonna have to ask you to back off. It was like taking a toy away from a child. The man had the saddest expression I'd ever seen. There wasn't a trace of anger in it. Just hunched shoulders and a big, pouty frown, and his eyebrows scrunched up like a cartoon character's. Both our drinks were ready at the same time. I took mine, and he took his. For some reason, I made eye contact with him. Then he threw his cup on the floor. I just barely managed to make it to my class on time after I had run home to change my chai-soaked clothes. The manager had yelled at both of us. He seemed to think it was some kind of prank the two of us worked on together. Look, these knuckleheads even dressed alike. I sat down at the back of the lecture hall. I was still too mad to focus on my professor, so while I pretended to take notes, I checked the neighbor bulletin. My neighborhood had its own little message board called Neighbor Bulletin. Originally, it was supposed to be a way for the people in the apartment buildings to organize and keep tabs on the landlords, with the goal of eventually forming some kind of tenants union. But the board was completely overrun by crazies and whiners, people who accused their roommates of stealing trash, drunks rambling about nothing, racist tirades, and that sort of thing. I read the boards as a way of reminding myself that eventually I'd be out of this hellhole. After I graduated, I could go anywhere. I believe I expected to see a post from my twin while I was ignoring my lecture. And sure enough, I saw the title, Altercation in the Coffee Shop, Read. I clicked on Read On. Beware this man, I finally met my twin stranger. I was excited, very rude, slapped coffee out of my hand. Why couldn't you just be friendly? Not every day you get to see someone who looked so much like you. Didn't get picture, but he looked identical to me, so here is a picture of myself for reference. It just went on like that. All caps, spelling mistakes and all. There was a selfie of him standing outside, looking even less like me than he did before. This was hilarious. Who did this idiot think he would reach with this? I thought about commenting and picking a fight with this guy, but I decided against it. It would be cruel to mess with someone with such an obvious mental problem. I cursored up to click the back button, but something held me back. The selfie. He didn't look any different. Same dopey smile, same child's haircut. He was wearing a yellow t-shirt. Most of his torso was cut off by the picture's lower border. I could tell the top of the t-shirt said 28th Annual. I looked down at my shirt to confirm what I already knew. Upside down, I could read 28th Annual Mendon County 5K. I clicked back to the post. The timestamp indicated the post had been made only 7 minutes ago. That couldn't be enough time to... Wait, I had done it. I had run home soaked in coffee, changed, ran to school, opened my laptop and logged onto the forum. It stood to reason my doppelganger could do the same. I slammed my laptop shut. It was loud. Everyone in the class looked at me. Even the professor was quiet. I couldn't take it. I stood up and walked out the door. Okay, this had to be a coincidence. Lots of people have the same shirts. This guy couldn't be watching me. But I changed in the living room because I was in a rush. The blinds were open. The blinds were closed in my room, but I didn't change in there. I didn't change in there because I was in a rush. My apartment was on the first floor. Anyone could have seen me changing. Okay, this had to be a coincidence. I stopped. I had been walking back and forth down the hallway leading to the college cafeteria. I stood a moment to calm myself down and closed my eyes. My apartment is the bottom story of a townhouse. The bottom story of the townhouse next door is also an apartment. The room in that place closest to my house, separate from my living room, only by the alley with our garbage bins in it, is empty and used as storage. I know this because I had been to some parties at that house. I used to be pretty good friends with the woman who lived there. I remember that woman had moved out abruptly. I hadn't been friends with the roommates, so I'd never been back to the house after she was gone. I grabbed my phone and scrolled far, far back through the text, hoping that maybe I'd saved the long message she had sent me when I asked where she'd been. I couldn't find it. I didn't really expect to. Her name wasn't even in my contacts anymore. All I could remember from the message is that she'd moved out because of the creepy new guy her other roommates had met on Craigslist and let move in. I couldn't recall any other details, but I knew, somehow I knew, that this had to be my twin. If he was staying in that room closest to my living room, and I hadn't noticed all this time, that meant he had no furniture. The room looked bare from my window. He had to be sleeping on a mat on the floor directly under the window, completely out of sight. Disgusting. Okay, I had to calm down. I was reading too far into this. But the image kept appearing in my mind. That man, that idiot, squatting on a filthy mattress, barely more than 25 feet away from me, ranting on a message board on his laptop, with clothes, my clothes, strewn all over the floor. Disgusting. Maybe my imagination was running away from me, but I couldn't get away from that image. It felt like it had to be the truth. I knew I wouldn't be able to go back to the lecture. I was too anxious. I figured my best bet was to go home, smoke a bowl, and take a new kind of reality check. I took several deep breaths, cut through the cafeteria, left campus, and made my way toward home. I'll tell you why I decided to go to the house. It was because I was high. When I smoke, I get sociable, but in a very weird way. In fact, my friends at parties back in high school gave me the stoned version of me a name, the Peacemaker. I would insert myself into tense situations, or what I perceived to be tense situations, and tried to resolve them diplomatically. I'd try to get drunk couples to stop arguing. I'd get between tough guys trying to show off. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it got me punched in the face. I was sitting there, smoking, and thinking about that house, and it seemed to me that maybe this was all just a big misunderstanding. I put myself in the mindset of a sad, possibly mentally challenged guy, living in little more than a walk-in closet, and I thought I'd want to be my friend too. I'd want to imitate me too. I mean, I'm a cool guy, right? I would walk over there and smooth things out, I'd tell him he was coming on a little strong, but it was cool. I'd help him develop his wardrobe. As I was walking to the blue front door of that house, I was writing a nice little classic corny college movie in my head. The peacekeeper helps Poindexter get his stuff together and find a girlfriend. It was 2 p.m. I knocked on the door. No response. I did that thing that people do in the movies when there's no answer at the door, and I tried the knob. It was unlocked. I went in. I felt pretty stupid. The house was empty. No one was living there. The walls were painted that flat, inoffensive white that landlords like when a place isn't rented. The doormat was brand new. There was a faint smell of bleach. The place was the same general layout as my apartment, but with the featureless walls and lack of furniture, I felt like I was in a maze. I opened a door in the hallway. A pristine bathroom. None of those half-full bottles of shampoo a shared bathroom always accumulates. I walked to the kitchen. Everything was brand new. There's something I don't like about a kitchen where the refrigerator isn't running. I was expecting kind of a comforting hum to break the silence of that house. The fact that it wasn't there made the silence even stronger. I opened the refrigerator door. The light didn't come on. There were dust particles in the beams of light from the window panes above the sink. There was a shrill, shrieking sound. I jumped about a foot in the air, but the sound stopped as soon as it started. I paused. Then I realized. A smoke detector in one of the rooms was signaling it had a low battery. Even though I knew what it was now, I knew I would jump a mile when I heard that noise again. I decided to leave. Before I made it to the front door, I decided to check out the walk-in closet. I wanted to see just how much of my living room you could have seen from it. Now that I knew the creep couldn't be living here, I figured I'd probably been imagining how much you could have seen me from outside my house anyway. This was all just a case of my imagination, my paranoia running away from me. I figured out which of the doors in the hallway would be the room adjacent to the garbage bin alleyway and swung the door open. It must have been about an hour and a half later, and I had called Ali 7 times with no response. What can I say? I was panicking. We had broken up quite a long time ago, but we were still close, and she always picked up, always responded to my texts, even if it was just to tell me she was busy and she would get back to me. I hung up after hearing the voicemail message for the 8th time. I was seriously considering calling the cops. But why could I possibly tell the cops? I'd snuck into a house on a whim. I had, purely by chance, in a room empty except for a filthy mattress, found a printout candid picture of my ex-girlfriend. I believed, without any evidence, that this room belonged to a random guy who creeped on me. I definitely looked like the crazy one here. Officer, you don't get it. He posted about me online. I got out my laptop, logged onto Facebook, and found Ali's profile. This was a dead end. She was not an active Facebook user. Her last status had been made 2 months ago. But I looked closely at the selfie. I realized something. I could tell exactly where in the city she had taken it. I walk everywhere, and I know hundreds of odd little landmarks, and I could tell where she had been to take that selfie, because I recognized the fence she was standing in front of. It was a bizarre fence that enclosed one of the big houses in the nice part of town. Its posts were topped with little statuses of Dachshunds. I was inspired. I went back to the neighbor bulletin and clicked on Altercation in a coffee shop, read. There he was, with his dumb grin and my t-shirt. I could see over his right shoulder, a low concrete wall with heavy graffiti, and behind the wall, obscuring part of the tree line, a blue birdhouse with a barber pole striped roof. I knew the city so freaking well. McCabe Park. I could have walked to that grubby little park with my eyes closed. I hopped on my bike. It was after 5. It was the golden hour. I felt like I was in a movie. As I sped through neighborhoods on my bike, I saw the city in brief impressions and moments. A pigeon perched on a don't walk sign, a homeless man with a saxophone. I couldn't believe it was me who was living through this. It was like I was watching everything I did through binoculars. I rounded the corner of Smith Street and Gollum and parked my bike at the entrance of McCabe Park. There was a plume of thick smoke emerging from behind the trees and the stripy birdhouse. I walked through the overgrown park in the direction of the source of the smoke. It stank. The stench was almost unbearable. How had nobody called the cops to investigate this stench? The apartment buildings across the street from the park was abandoned, and the street was bordered mostly by businesses that would have been closed by that time of day. I suppose the residents of the few townhouses near the park simply didn't care. The stench was hard to describe. When I was very small, I tried to cook a whole pack of hot dogs in the microwave. I left the thing running for 15 minutes until the hot dogs charred and the plastic melted. The smell was like 1,000 times more intense version of that charred, chemical smell. It got stronger as I approached the southern corner of the park. I had to push through some brush before I was able to see what was going on. There was a big pile of tires in a mound that leaned against the wall that formed the corner of the park. Evidently, people had been dumping garbage there where the trees were thickest and no one would notice. Some of the tires had been stacked into a little tower that leaned back into the bigger mound, and these were the ones smouldering and emanating that terrible stench. There were some empty gas cans scattered around. No, it wasn't really a stack of smouldering tires. The tires weren't plumbed to each other, they were shoved onto something that kept them together. I stepped closer. Sticking out of the gap in the tires was a blackened human arm. "Hey buddy, what are you doing here?" I turned around. My twin wasn't wearing one of my outfits anymore. He was naked. If I hadn't been looking for a fight, I wouldn't have had to bear witness to any of this. If I had ignored the creepy man in the coffee shop, if I had minded my business and gone to class, I could have let the cops find the tire fire. It's true, I would have been heartbroken, maybe even devastated, to find out what happened to my ex-girlfriend. But I never would have connected a naked lunatic with a crazy guy who tried to make friends over coffee. It was my need for a fight, some sort of confrontation, that turned a lurid newspaper clipping into something I have to see a counselor about now. What can I tell you about the chase? It probably lasted less than a minute. I ran away from the naked man, who yelled and raved at me. I wove through an overgrown park as the sun was going down. When I jumped into traffic, a guy in a pickup truck swerved and swore at me, but I made it to the other side. To be honest, I wasn't even sure if the man was following me all the way until I heard the truck's brakes squeal. The truck driver, who was remarkably calm for a guy who had just crushed a human being, made me wait for the cops with him. He seemed to think I had something to do with this. I told the cops I had seen the smoke and smelled the smell, and I had run away when I saw the naked man. Why complicate things? They didn't need to know about the house and the message board and the coffee shop. When they let me go, I took a long, circuitous route home. I knew I wouldn't be able to sleep, and I wanted to delay having to face that for as long as I could. I made my way to another park, a better kept one where they trim the trees and don't let people dump garbage. And I sat down on a clean bench. I wish I could have sat there until the sun rose.